After doing over 7 million sales across a range of industries from door-to-door, high ticket, and real estate sales, I have cracked the code on managing high performing sales teams. And in today's video, we're gonna break down the 3 keys that you need to run any sales team. And the third one is gonna be the most important. So make sure that you stick around because we're gonna be going through everything today. So let's dive into it. Okay, first and foremost, we have KPIs. Okay, so what are KPIs? Those are key performance indicators. Okay, so the very first thing that you need to do is number 1, set them, okay? Now, I know this might sound obvious, but some people don't have any KPIs, meaning they have no standards that they're holding their sales team to, okay? Now, what should they be? Well, it obviously depends on what you sell, but it needs to be a revenue-driven type of KPI. As an example, let's say you're selling a high-ticket product, okay? And they're a closer. It could be 2 things. It could be the number of units they need to sell and the amount of cash they collect, okay? Now, some people set KPIs on statistics, right? It might be on your closing rate or your offer rate and things like that. And while those things are important, I found that it's more beneficial to use the bottom line activities that drive results, which is gonna be cash collected and then units. I don't care about top line revenue because that is not the same as the actual cash that you collect, okay? Because there can be payment plans, stuff like that. So focus on the activities that really make a difference to the business's bottom line and also your salesperson's bottom line, all right? So you gotta set KPIs, all right? Now, the second thing, okay, is what are called EODs, all right? So that is end of day reports, okay? These are self-reported from the salespeople. You put them in a Slack channel. What I like to do is I have an entire company channel where we all put in EODs, every position from client success to salespeople to fulfillment to ops, whatever it is, they all have an end of day report and it's all a little bit different. Now for the salespeople, it should look something like this. Basically, it's tracking the KPIs for that day, okay? And then a rating system for themselves. What I mean by that is they will rate, hey, am I on pace to hit the goals that I set, the projections for this month? How did I take care of my biology last night? It's almost like a journal of some sorts. Okay, I know that might sound kind of hokey to have a salesperson report on like, hey, did you get good sleep? Did you follow your morning routine? But these are leading indicators of what's to come. Example, if you have a salesperson that goes out Friday, Saturday, Sunday night and gets, blitzed, well, and they get terrible sleep, they're not gonna perform well, right? Now, they might not be cognizant enough to realize, man, I gotta really hone in on my sleep. But if they put on their EODs, 5 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 5 out of 10, and then you start to see that their sales number is slipping, not only obviously will you know, but more importantly, they will realize, okay, there's a correlation here. And if you're a good manager, you'll bring it up, hey man, just wanna give you a heads up, what's going on? Let's talk about this thing. It looks like every time you get crappy sleep, your numbers suffer for the next few days. What do you think you need to do to fix that, right? So it's a way for them to get control, okay? Because here's what you have to understand. Everything that happens in sales, you don't have sales problems. You have personal problems that show up on your sales calls, right? Or in your sales environment. So if someone's not sleeping, they're not gonna perform well, right? Sales is the only position where you need to take care of yourself outside of work to do well. If you're unhappy, if you feel like crap, you're not gonna do well. Sales is a transference of energy. So all that stuff off the calls matters more than what you do on the calls, okay? That's why they track and have a rating system. Now that can all be individualized. That's something for another video, but just have them rate basic stuff. Like, are they sleeping? Are they taking care of their biology, right? Did they hit their morning routine, right? Are they lifting? Whatever it is that you can structure down to the main core things that they do that helps them feel good, that should be on a rating system 1 to 10 that they rate, okay? To hold themselves accountable. It's not for you to belittle them like, hey man, you got a 5 out of 10 in your sleep. That's not the goal, okay? Again, it's for them to be able to self-reflect, right? Next, they're gonna have a overview, okay? So the overview of the day is gonna be basically their summation of what the day was like, right? So they might say it's like, hey, had a really good day, closed Becky, really awesome call. I implemented what I learned from the sales meeting, blah, blah, blah. It's them talking about it, okay? Again, it's their journal. It's their time to reflect, all right? And then obviously what you're gonna have is call overviews. Now, just to make this clear, it really depends on the industry and specifically how many calls. If it's a salesperson who's taking 50 calls in a day or something, some crazy high volume, they don't need to do that. okay? If it's something where they're taking less than 10 calls, I would have them list out each call and then give notes on those specific calls, the takeaways, etc. So you can mix and match this for what you need, or maybe it could just be the most meaningful conversations, i.e. a setter who's doing, hundreds of calls in a day. They're not gonna talk about every single call, but they should do the ones that they actually set, right? And so what they'll do is basically the notes that they would put in the CRM about that prospect, they would also put in here as an overview. And again, it's another point of reflection for them to see how they're doing, right? They might say something like, oh, well, I had a really good call with Becky. I tried implementing the thing that I learned on the meeting today. I don't think I did it correctly because my tonality was a little bit off. I'm gonna try better on that tomorrow, okay? Now, why is all this important? Okay, so all of this, before we move on to the training and the culture, this is a leading indicator. As an example, if you start to notice that the EODs aren't coming in on time, right? They need to come in at the end of the day, not the next morning, the end of the day. When the salesperson finishes their day, EOD needs to go in, okay? If they're not doing that, that's a sign they're getting lazy. That's a sign that there might be something else going on. Maybe it's, they had a personal issue come up, whatever it is, but those are the little things that you need to be tapped in on, right? Also, the effort. You can smell it from a mile away through these leading indicators on how well they're performing if they're about to dip, right? Because if they're starting to put it, in very late, if they're not putting a lot of detail, they're barely trying on it, stuff like that, that's a sign that's showing how bought in they are, right? When salespeople are bought in, they'll fill this out. And again, I want to make this very clear. Look, I'm a sales guy. I don't like admin work. No one likes admin work, okay? So this needs to be framed in their benefit, and it's just the one thing that they do. There's no sales role where you're gonna get away with having no admin work. It's like, this is all the admin work you really need to do, besides obviously putting notes in the CRM, and this is there to help them. Like, I journal every day. I'm the business owner. I do that because it helps me. So that's a skill that the salespeople should be doing, which is what they do in the end of the reports, all right? So that's KPIs. Okay, next, let's talk training, okay? This is key. Number one, daily meetings. Okay? This is so important. Anytime I've consulted on a team that has not been doing well, they aren't doing this. They're not meeting daily. They might meet once a week, twice a week. That is not enough. Especially if you run a remote business, you need to meet more frequently. Look, not a lot of people like meetings, so you gotta make good meetings, right? And the goal isn't to have a meeting for the sake of having a meeting. It's because that's when you can build the culture of the team. Culture takes place when more than one person or two people are together, right? That happens in a meeting, right? Or if you have events or stuff like that, you need to have the meetings, okay? Because that's when people get to interact. That's when you get those jokes, you get the camaraderie. It's important, okay? But more importantly, you also do the training. You need to train your sales staff daily, okay? Now, here's what not to do. And this is what a lot of people do when they start doing this, is it'll just be like, daily call reviews, right? Every day they're just reviewing calls, right? And that's not bad, but the problem is this, is that it usually tends to turn to something negative, where basically all you're doing is reviewing the worst calls, the ones that were lost, and it creates a negative environment on the team. It feels heavy. The sales guys go into the meeting like, oh my God, I'm gonna get ripped up today. And sometimes they need that, but you can't have that being every day. So what I like to do is I like to stagger it, okay? So let me give you an example of what I might do. So I might do 2 lost call reviews on Monday and then say Thursday, okay? So a lost call is obviously be like a call that didn't get close, right? Now, another side note, what a lot of people do is they'll take the worst person on the team and they'll review their stuff, and that's like all they do. Don't do that, okay? Instead, take the best person more often than not and review their things, because if they're having a problem, everyone else on the team can learn about it, right? And obviously, if you only have one rep, then, just review the one rep stuff. But listen to me on that, because if you're always reviewing the worst person's stuff, the other people, especially if there's a big gap in skill, you'll be like, why are we watching this? This is so dumb. This is a waste of my time. You don't want your salespeople feeling like that. When you run good meetings, they love it. They love coming in. They love training. They love the energy. That's what you're trying to create in your meetings, okay? Next, so we got 2 lost call reviews, okay? We do like Monday and Thursday, all right? Then we want to have a 1 call review, okay? You could even make it 2. Right? You could do that, say, Tuesday, and then you could do Friday, right? Or one of the things that would be good is you move the 1 call to Monday to start the week off strong. You have great energy, right? Because if people come in, I just put in this there for the sake of the video. Really, again, you can mix and match the days. But if people come in, they start the week off and you just are tearing into them, that's not a great feeling, right? Like, yes, we do need to hold our salespeople accountable, and sometimes you got to tear them up a little bit. However, you want to inspire them. You want them to have hope. You want them to feel good like they can do this. You want to lift them up. That's your job. You're trying to pour into them, right? So start the week off strong. I'd recommend just doing a 1 call on the Monday, all right? Anyways, so when you do the 1 call review, what you're doing is you're taking a call that was successful and you're reviewing it, and then you're showing everyone, hey, great job here. You're giving them praise in public, which 1 is gonna make them feel good. 2, other reps in the team are gonna be able to learn from, oh wow, that person did this good. Let me try that on my call, etc. Right? So it uplifts the team. It positive reinforces the behaviors that you want your salespeople to take. Okay? That's critical. It's positive reinforcement, right? Next, you can do, say, 1 or 2 theory days. your calls, okay? So what I'm talking about on theory days or your calls, so that would be breaking down something specific, right? Like let's say you notice that the majority of the team is struggling with objection handling, right? Well, you can have a day where all you do is go over objections or you're role playing with them, right? So we'll put that in as well. And also as a side note, when you do the call reviews, that's another video because how to properly do a call review, it's not as simple as just watching the call. There's a lot more to it. You would also want to role play when you find the issues in the call. So like when you found the problems in the lost calls, you want to go into that and role play it with the person and make sure that you correct the behavior and that they understand that, okay? Anyways, on the theory days, again, you would go over something that they need help on, right? That the majority of the team is going to need help on, right? And then you can role play. Another thing that I love to do is if you're still taking calls or maybe you can take some sporadically, you should ideally be the best closer on the team. You should be your best salesperson if you're the business owner, purely because like, you know more and you're the business owner, right? So what you can do, and this is assuming you have good calls, right? Like if for some reason you don't do this. Review one of your calls. Get one of your calls on the video and break it down. And the salespeople will eat it up. They learn so much from you and you can point out the nuances. It's great to do, okay? Now, the way that I would do this for max effectiveness is I would focus on one key area that you did really well that you can notice that your salespeople are struggling on, right? So if we have the entire call, we have the intro, we have the discovery, we have the transition, we have the pitch, then we have objection handling, right? That's a lot for someone to take in at once. It might be too much for them to absorb, right? So instead, focus on the one key area. Maybe they're struggling in the discovery section, so you just review your discovery, okay? And you want to have an engaging environment where you can say, okay, hey, who noticed what I just did there? Someone mute stuff, let me know. And then boom, someone jumps in, they're explaining what you did. That's what you want to see, right? That shows that they're learning, right? Without you just having to tell them, this is what I did here, this is what I did here. Like, let them see if they can come up with it. And then in addition to that, what you can also do is you can have, 1 day of admin/pipeline, okay? Now, again, this really depends on the business. Let's say you have a very fulfillment heavy model. So maybe what it'll be is that on this one day, you have your client success department come in and they sync up with the sales department, go over any issues, etc. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but having one day where you can just boom, knock out admin, or again, depending on the business model, go through your pipeline, right? To make sure that they're not leaving stragglers in there. That's a great way to run the meeting, okay? So that's the training, okay? Now that happens on daily meetings. In addition to that, you need to be doing one-on-ones, okay? Obviously, if you only have one rep, you don't need to do one-on-ones because your sales meetings are one-on-ones. What I like to do is I'll do these weekly if I have multiple reps, okay? And in those one-on-ones, again, this is topic for another video as it goes more in depth. That's gonna be a time for me and them to get together, for them to see how close they are to their goals. And we're talking about bigger stuff here, right? So like if a sales rep told me that he wanted to come in so that he could retire his parents and he knows he needs to make $7,000 a month to do that, our conversations are gonna be geared around, hey, how are you doing towards that goal? How can I help you? How can I support you, etc. Right? And then obviously there's other things that can take place. Now, if you have someone who's struggling or there's someone else who wants additional training, you might also be training in those meetings as well. But the point is it's not just to go over sales stuff. Like, yes, you want to go over stats and that's important, but it's about pouring into that person that you're talking to. This is where you get to do the real high level coaching, the personal development work with that person to turn them into the person they need to be to hit their goals, okay? That's training, all right? Now, we're gonna talk about culture, okay? This is the most important. You need to do all these things, but if you don't have culture, none of these things matter, okay? And I'm gonna give you a tip. You have to set the tone in the beginning. One of the most difficult things, and a lot of business owners go through it, and I've been through it, so I can say this, is they start too relaxed, right? Maybe they're having meetings and sometimes people miss it, they don't say anything, maybe they're only doing a meeting a week, something like that, people come in late. Well, if you try and switch the tone, often the people that are originally there, they might not stay because they weren't introduced to that. Like that's not how they saw the company when they first got started. And they like what they're currently in because they're there, right? And so if you, boom, you get super hard on them all of a sudden, you crack down, usually doesn't work out. So it's always better to start harder and then loosen up if you need to for some reason, compared to the inverse, all right? So what does culture mean? Well, number one, it means this is when we're together, right? 2 or more people are together, they're in meetings, we're talking, we're collaborating. It's also gonna be one, the sales channel, okay? So on Slack, you should have a sales channel where boom, notifications are going off as you're making sales. When you guys are crushing it, and you'll see this, the salespeople are talking more, they're sending, obviously appropriate, but funny memes, stuff like that. Like there's a culture, there's a vibe, right? Salespeople should be talking to each other outside of work, right? Getting to know each other, okay? One of the easiest ways to start building that culture outside of the daily meetings is have a sales channel, right? Where you guys are sharing wins, okay? Wins, sales, okay? And this can expand where maybe you have other channels that go over, fitness where people can hold each other accountable, right? It could be, out of office stuff, whatever. Talk about fun but appropriate things, right? Like that's where you start to build culture, okay? The other part of culture, and this is really the key, is standards, okay? Your standards. This is critical. It's really what are you gonna tolerate as the owner, as the manager, as a leader, okay? So what does that mean? People need to show up on time, okay, to the meetings. They need to put their EODs in on time, right? They need to show up to calls on time. I'll tell you a funny story about that, right? It's punctuality. How you do one thing is how you do everything. I had someone tell me that I met at a conference that their sales reps were showing up to the sales calls late, the way that they make money. That person needs to get fired, right? Unless there was some emergency where they had like a family thing, but it happened multiple times. I think the guy was just slacking off. That's unacceptable, okay? So let's dive a little bit more into standards, okay? So when I'm talking about being on time, it's to all the things that they need to do, right? Because those little things, that's what makes the difference. If you have a sales guy that's constantly showing up late to meetings, what he's really saying is like, I don't care. Now, part of that could be that your meetings suck and you need to make them better, but regardless, you want to be first looking for people who are going to follow through, and then you need to hold them accountable. So if someone comes in late, that doesn't mean you just destroy them immediately. First thing I'll do is like, hey, what happened? Everything good? Like check in. Maybe there was an emergency that happened, right? But then you need to reset the tone. Hey, listen, these meetings are critical. This is not something you can be late to. Now, I understand if there's an emergency, something crazy happens. If that happens in the future, let me know beforehand, put it in the sales general chat, tag me, and let me know that you're going to be running a few behind, right? Or maybe you have a call that's running over, okay? We're not here to be, warlords. If they have something that's legitimate, understandable, right? But they need to be on top of it, right? Letting us know if something's gonna happen, okay? The next thing is the EODs. Again, I talked about this earlier. This is a big area where people will start to slip up. If they start to put their end of day reports in late, right? They're not giving a lot of detail. When that starts to happen, you need to correct that behavior immediately. So if someone puts their end of day report in late, hop in a quick huddle. Hey man, everything okay? I saw your end of day report came in a little late. Everything good, right? And you gotta do this from a place of caring because you don't always want to assume the worst, right? Something legitimately could happen. Meaning like maybe they had an emergency and they put it in late. And then all you have to do is say, hey, no worries, totally understand, happens. Listen, next time, just make sure you carve out that time so that you're good, right? Now, here's a critical thing. If you have to reset the tone for someone and realign them that they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing, you can only tolerate so much of it. I have a 3-strike rule on being on time, okay? So basically what that looks like is the first time they do it, we'll have a conversation of, hey, what happened here? Why did this happen? Okay, don't do it again. All right, now here's the thing with culture and standards. If someone violates your standards, in addition to KPIs, they gotta go, right? Now, that doesn't mean the first time they're late to your meeting, you fire them, right? It means that you need to hold them accountable. So what that might look like is the first time it happens, you should check in a non-confrontational way and see what happened. Example, someone shows up late, you huddle them afterwards. Hey, Jeff, what happened? Everything good? Right? I noticed you came late to the meeting. It's not like you. What's going on? And if they say, oh, I had this emergency, say, hey, totally understand. Look, in the future, just give me a heads up, put in the sales generator here, good, right? Now, if it's something dumb, we're like, oh, I slept in too late. That's where you can be a bit more firm. Like, hey, do you really think that's acceptable? No, like, listen, this is a culture of the team. Everyone else showed up on time. Set your alarm. I don't want to see it happen again, okay? And you just move on. You don't need to make it a big thing. However, if it happens again after that type of conversation, boom, that's when you need to realign them, right? So generally on the second time, I'd be a bit more firm with them, okay? And then if it happens again, usually when it happens for like a second, third time, something like that, again, barring that it's nothing of an emergency, right? You let them know, hey, listen, this is not acceptable. Like this isn't the culture of the team that we have here, right? And the best way to do this is to realign them with their goals. Let them know, hey, how you do one thing is how you do everything. Bring them back to, listen, you told me that the reason you want to do this job is because you want to take care of your mom, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Well, what does that do to you when you don't show up to the meetings on time? What does that do for your goals, right? That's a better way to get them to change their behavior because you're aligning them to saying, hey, you're out of alignment with where you told me you wanted to go, that deep reason, which is part of the reason you need to hire well and ask high quality questions when you're interviewing them to understand like why they actually want to do this job, you know what I mean? And if that still doesn't work, you can let them know, listen, if this happens again, we're gonna let you go, right? Because this is just out of line with the company culture, right? And after, if they do it again, after you've let them know you're gonna let them go, you let them go, right? It's pretty simple. As an example, I've had people on my team who have showed up late, right? And after multiple conversation interventions happen again, I let them know, like, I'm gonna let you go. And they were the best performers. I've had multiple high performers, top people on my team that I let them go purely because they did not fit the culture. Because here's what you don't understand. If you have someone on your team who maybe they are the best, but they're not a cultural fit, okay? where they're showing up late, or maybe they're being very negative, or doing things that would destroy the team, over a long enough time horizon, the team's performance will be worse, right? Even if you have someone who's doing really well, their negative energy, their lack of buy-in will infect everyone else, okay? And as a result, everything will drop. So it's better to let someone go who's not a cultural fit than to keep them in just because they're making you a ton of money. Okay, that's my opinion on it. So if you implement these 3 things, it's gonna help you tremendously in your sales team, all right? Now, there'll be additional videos going deeper into these topics, but this is a great place to start. Hope it helps you out. See you in the next one.